What's up guys, it's Scoopman5000 back for another action figure review, and today we got to do handheld camera because quite literally this is a big one. We are looking at the brand new Spawn 2021 Violator. We just looked at the clown, but now we're looking at his alter ego, the big demonic bastard that is the Violator. Probably one of the biggest figures I've reviewed on this channel. You can see the big box here, the black and red motif. On the side, some nice comic book artwork, and then on the back, a studio shot of the figure. But we got no time to lose. We got to break this guy out of his plastic prison. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to open him up, we're going to take a look. And here's the Violator out of the packaging. And what a ridiculous beast, and I mean that in the best way possible. I'm going to have trouble reviewing this. He's barely fitting in the little studio setup that I have. Now with the figure this size, as you'd expect, no accessories. He does come included with the figure stand, but I don't see how that's going to help this guy stand up. I think more than enough weight to him that he's not going to have that problem. I guess if anything, the only problem with him standing would come with the way his legs are shaped, that kind of animal shape with that. That might kind of cause some problems, but as you can see, I just dropped him down. He's standing. I'm going to have to play with him a little bit to get the perfect pose, but for now he's kind of crunched down. He's fitting in the studio relatively well, and really just incredible. Now obviously, if you know the Violator, he's usually depicted in a more skinny kind of way. He almost looks more like a scorpion or something is how I describe it. Usually this whole midsection, the kind of the torso and even the arms are much thinner. And even on the classic toy, the cartoon, the comics, everything like that. Somewhere in the recent years, they took Violator and they hulked him up, they beefed him up, and this is a much more meaty and muscly version of the Violator. But that being said, I think I definitely prefer this look to the original, especially if you want to compare toys. Now we just need to get a new Malbolgia in this style and really redeem ourselves from that old Spawn toy. But for now, this is the biggest, baddest boss villain that we have for the Spawn shelf so far in this brand new lineup, and I couldn't be more excited. We're gonna try to go ahead and look at as much detail as possible here. I think the best place to start is gonna be the face. I'm gonna go ahead and move that up. So you can see his signature three-horn kind of design here. One's coming out almost out of his spine or his back, and really just some incredible sculpt and probably some of the best paint that's on any McFarlane toys that I've ever seen. Or at the very least, it's comparable to the McFarlane toys of old, where paint and sculpt are really the #1 priority before they had to worry about articulation. But it looks like a brown plastic, which has a black wash over it, and then white paint over that, or it's a brown plastic, white paint, then a black wash. So 3 different layers here, 3 different colors. It really makes it look natural, makes it look like a kind of gross, decayed growth coming out of him, some bone protrusions. So the 2 horns at the side here, the more kind of goat horns, and then the large horn coming out of his back. Now on the face, when you get to it, it's very glossy and shiny, but it just kind of looks gross and disgusting in the best way possible, like I keep saying. The eyes here, you can see, have their own unique sculpt, some red paint, and then some black dots over that. So even that's unique. For the teeth, you can see here, they kind of transition. They start out as kind of black, but then they fade out into a more bone color, so they look like kind of decayed, gross teeth. And then the inside of the mouth here, which by the way is articulated, but it kind of just goes from very open to less open. You're not really going to be able to close his mouth. But you can see in there a pretty moist looking mouth is all I'm going to say. Just very pink on the inside, and whatever kind of wash they used here is a dark black but like oily kind of texture. So really incredible stuff here. And then the rest of the figure, if you want to simplify it, is more or less kind of like a Doomsday, but he's a bit more maybe reptilian. But you could see, right here I think is a good example where you got this texture here is kind of more smaller and grouped together, but then you get some kind of more inconsistent patterns going on here. But then when you get to his head, it's kind of more protruding and sharper. So it's visually interesting, even though I guess the design itself wouldn't lend itself to that. When you get to the back here, you could see his spine kind of ripping out of his back like he's Abomination, and even that you could see has its own bone color paint and then black wash over that. And then comparable to Doomsday, you see kind of the tailbone sticking out, and then on the arms, on the legs, you see the bones coming out. Just these random gross, and that's, I think, a good word, random, to describe it. Obviously it's intentional, but they did a good job of differentiating all these different patterns and textures on this gigantic figure, where I feel like I'm looking at each piece of them, each limb and each side of them, and they all look unique. And somehow it's really not getting lost in translation. It's not like too busy where it all looks samey. I really think that if you look at the arm, you look at the top, you look at the head, you look at the shoulder, it all looks different. It's all popping out at you. So obviously you can tell a lot of care was put into the design here, and pretty much at every stage of production, I think they nailed it. So the product that we're getting here is pretty incredible. So I think without a doubt, not even owning any other Violator figures, this has to be the best one of all time. You can look at some of the originals for nostalgia, but this is incredible. This is a really incredible piece. So I think if you're a fan of Spawn in any way, I think this is going to be probably the most essential pickup, other than maybe the classic Spawn from the Kickstarter. This is like the number 2. So I'm pretty blown away by this guy. We're going to go ahead and try to look at his articulation and how it works. Haven't really played with it yet, so we're going to learn together. So the head, I think, like it should move. It looks like it's a separate piece, but now that I'm touching him, now that I'm trying to move him around, it doesn't seem like it. So I'm not going to count head articulation, but your mileage may vary. Like I showed you before, the jaw can open up this far back and then can kind of close, or as much as you want to call that close. You can still see plenty inside, but I think the open jaw, the mouth look, that's Violator. The head in general is pretty unchanged from the original design of Violator. It's just when you get to the chunk, the beef of the rest of the figures where it kind of diverges. Now I don't even know where else to go. I guess the arms would be the next natural spot. Nothing at the shoulders, no articulation there. Well, I mean a shoulder cut, but we do get a hinge and a swivel, but no bicep cut is what I meant to say. Doesn't seem like any butterfly either, which I wouldn't blame this figure for not having. And then the elbows, these are the max range already. So it's not quite 90, but it's almost there. And obviously that can straighten out, and his arms will almost reach his feet. That's kind of the way the Violator is shaped. The torso is pretty decent in here. So you have an upper torso, a mid torso, and then a kind of crotch piece. So similar to most figures that we're getting nowadays. You see he's crunching up that far, and then he can go back a little bit, but you kind of have to keep that shape because of how the way he stands. You can see that's the natural way to stand him up. Thigh going that way, calf going the opposite direction, and then the foot kind of juts out at the bottom. Very animal, demon-like legs here. On the inside, still the same DNA as any other McFarlane for the legs. Forgot to mention his hands rotate and they hinge. Kick back that far, kick forward that much. The knee can go all the way back, and then it can go forward, so you can actually like stand his legs up fairly straight and human-like, I guess you could say. But I think I'm going to go for that more animal look with that shape. Then this is its own joint here, so there's like a third part of the leg, so there's a double joint going on, so you can kind of move the foot all the way up if you want to. Maybe he could kind of, no, he can't really stand like that, so it's usable. It's more just to get him to stand this way. And then a pretty impressive side to side ankle on this guy as well. But overall, I think I've gushed enough about the figure. I'm going to try to fit him here, and somehow we're going to go ahead and do some comparison. So here's both of the Al Simmons kind of main figures you might have in your collection. The Kickstarter on the right, the classic costume, and then on the left is the Mortal Kombat 11, the more modern design for Spawn. And then of course we got to show him off with the clown, the alter ego of the Violator, obviously. Somehow this turns into that, the true form of the clown, you could say. But in terms of the shelf, two very different sizes and scales to go along with our 7-inch sized human characters. Then we throw these two in the mix, and we got a pretty diverse kind of range of heights on our shelf. We also reviewed the Gunslinger to start this Spawn kick out, and as you can see, he's a tall figure. He's almost 8 inches tall, but the Violator, even crouched, is still beating him by plenty. And then we're gonna go a little crazy. Here's the Raw 10 Cygor toy from McFarlane Toys. This is kind of a kid's action play line. There's no articulation to this dude. He's just a big hollow piece of plastic, but they went ahead and they threw in a classic Spawn villain, Cygor, and this is pretty crazy. If you stood him up full height, he would actually be taller or about the same to this figure. Now obviously this is $20 and this is $50, but I think if you're looking at paint and you're looking at sculpt and especially articulation, I think he's still worth it. But for the size, this is a very telling comparison. And overall, that is going to do it for the Violator. And if you can't already tell, this might be one of my favorite figures of the year. There's just something about this absolute unit, this massive figure. And you're paying $50 for it, so I guess you're paying for the plastic. But there's nothing else like this in my collection for this figure. This is going to stand out amongst the Spawn shelf and amongst the whole collection, the whole bookshelf itself. We are also going to be looking at the Raven and the Redeemer to be finishing out this current first wave of Spawn figures. But we still got more to come. I know that there's a rumored She-Spawn, and I think there was a couple others, but I'm not remembering them. Either way, whenever they come out, I'll be picking them up and I'll be reviewing them. As always, I'm going to take some pictures and I'll leave my library on Instagram, scoopman_5000. But that is going to do it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next action figure review.